Hi folks, this is a little video being shot during the great coronavirus Easter lockdown. It's on Saturday the 11th of April 2020. It's for the benefit of any of those of you that are flathead V8 enthusiasts, particularly the French 225 4-inch crank version. I've just got this old girl out of a motor house. She's barn fresh, complete with bird droppings. It was to have been out on the roads and stretching its legs after the fitment of a 5-speed box, but sadly government decree in the interests of protecting everyone is that we have to stay firmly at home. So a bit of virtual motoring. It's an R.K.S, that stands for Ron Kemp Special, based on a 1946 Humber Staff Car chassis with its single transverse spring. Actually very good setup. Twin Lockheed leading shoe brakes on the front from the 1951 Super Snipe 12-inch drums, and a 2-inch wide friction material that really stops. Original registration, Lock 666. You'll actually find that in the motor. Some of the reports of the Land's End trials feature this car. It's got the SUMB .2 engine. The radiator is actually a cut down Ford F1 pickup radiator with a much improved core, much more fins in it. This engine, as folks will probably know, is actually one that was never produced by Ford. It uses a lot of Ford architecture, but it mixes the pre-48 and the post-48 designs, in that it's got distributor ignition, but it's still got the cast-on bell housing and the one-piece sump that goes under the flywheel. I've dressed it with some Ford parts like the inlet manifold and carb, which is 8BA. I've got an S10 single wire alternator with a slingshot mount. Pretty much standard though. Centre dump headers fitted in this, which is nice. But the big modification that I've been doing over the winter and was just itching to try, as you can imagine, is this ZF S5 18-3 gearbox conversion, which I designed and a local engineer, precision engineer John McKean, very expertly brought to fruition. It uses the Ford hogshead, which is on some of the gearboxes, not all of them. Sometimes it's cast in situ, but on some of them it's detachable, and it makes an excellent conversion. And that gearbox, it's got a uselessly low first and a pretty low reverse, but we skip first altogether in a light car like this, and the rest of the ratios are quite nicely chosen. But the particular advantage obviously is the 0.81 to 1/5 ratio, which is going to make it a lot more long-legged, because at the moment I'm running the Humber diff, which is a 4.1 or 4.09, I can't, no, 4.1, and it's got 650/16 tyres, and you can do the maths after that to work out what the gearing is and the kind of happy cruising speed. But this car is going to be fine for about 60-65 without extending the engine much, and it'll be nice and long-legged, not too much draft at that speed. It's running a straight through glass fibre glass fibre filled stainless exhaust. What else can I say about it? It's an alloy body, very light, on a traditional ash frame by an acclaimed regional coach builder, Richard Mead of Dorridge, who later went to South Africa, no, Rhodesia I think it was, as a metal spinner, and some of his works, metal spun art objects, are very collectible now, and I think he ended his days in Ireland not so very long ago. but he was a pretty illustrious coach builder, and he's responsible for creating this form on a modified Humber chassis, where the engine was moved back 18 inches, and Ted Lloyd Jones did that. He was at the Triangle Garage in Shirley, Birmingham, and I think he was responsible for the Triangle Special, an obscure special with I think it was a Rolls-Royce engine. So an interesting man too. I've got a stump puller gear reduction starter on this, which makes turning over this engine a piece of cake, even with a pretty small battery. I think the seats, well, it's a bitzer, this car. Heaven knows what the windscreen is. I made up the limited wet weather gear, and it's very good with these side screens in place. They lift off. These seats I got on eBay, and very nice leather job they are too, and spot on. Steering wheel's Humber. Some of the instruments are later Snipe. As I say, it's a pleasing amalgam of things, but the body is very professional job from 1946. The car's actually registered for some reason as 1951, and the chassis, all the Humber componentry, is all Battle of Britain 1940, as would be used by top brass such as Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery and other senior officers. Humber had a War Department commission to provide a great many of the lighter vehicles, armoured and non-armoured, especially the staff cars, and that's what this chassis was. And I guess it must have been ex-War Department surplus, and they stripped the body. I think it was probably an enclosed body, it might have been open, and they put this very lightweight body on and substituted at that time a Ford 3.9 Mercury engine. That's the 3 3/4 crank, but I got a hold of this French engine when I acquired the car in Wales, and it's the 4-inch crank 255, and very good it is too. And such is the power to weight ratio that I've never bothered to give it twin carburetors, which I believe the car originally had, nor have I bothered to put an uprated heads on it, of which there are quite a few available, and you can get uprated ISCI cams and the like, and really it's very easy to take this to 150 horsepower, but it just doesn't need it. I enjoy the back roads, I enjoy the club runs, trundling along using that effortless 200 foot-pound torque that's available at pretty low revs, and it's just the sheer effortless pleasure of it. It's a period piece, and well, it's not about the speed, it's just about enjoying that lovely engine and all the history that lies behind it, both French and American and so on. It was that block owes its heritage to the first successful one-piece casting by the Ford engineers in their foundry. They had many attempts, and then they eventually managed to do the one-piece casting of that V8 block. Up to then, people had made the blocks in multiple parts on a two-cylinder blocks on a crankcase, and that wasn't nearly as stiff, and it certainly wasn't cheap. And well, it made Ford a great deal of money, that V8, and Bonnie and Clyde wrote a testimonial to Henry Ford extolling the virtues of that as a car that they could hotwire and get away on their crime spree in the Great Depression. They did a lot to popularise the Ford. I think it would be a 65 horsepower then. It'd be a smaller displacement than this, obviously, but it was a real goer for a cheap car for the blue-collar worker. So there we have it, an appreciation of the R.K.S, or the Ford Special generally.